And we're live.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Marriott Library Facebook Live event. My name is Allyson Mower. I'm a librarian, head of scholarly communication and copyright at Marriott Library. Today, we are talking about the book, Feed My Sheep, A Life of Alberta Henry by Colleen Whitley, published by the University of Utah Press. The panelists with us today, whom I will introduce here very shortly, will talk with us about the book and the life of Alberta Henry, as well as the collection of papers available here at Marriott Library. Marriott Library, we do these events as part of our mission to inspire the creation, discovery, and use of knowledge for Utah and the world. And we hope you enjoy today's event. We have all very much been looking forward to this one. To access the book, there's a couple of ways. You can follow the link to the catalog record for the title. We have it both in print and electronic, but I have to tell you, I have the print here in my office. So you'll have to read the electronic for now until I put this back in the collection. It is also available for purchase from the U of U Press. And I just was informed by Colleen, the author, and the press director, Glenda Cotter, that all royalties from the book, Feed My Sheep, go to the Alberta Henry Education Foundation, which is just really exciting. So you can follow the press link to, the link to the press's book page for more details on how to get access to the book. And to see a description of the archival papers that we're going to touch on a little bit during today's discussion, you can follow the Archives West link. And Jordan, our media specialist, is posting these links on the Facebook feed so that you can easily get access to more information. So let me introduce today's panelists. We have author Colleen Whitley. She is an established writer, publishing a number of articles, books, reviews, and poems. For 24 years, she taught writing courses at Brigham Young University, where she also contributed to the founding of their publication lab. Welcome, Colleen.
Thank you.
We have Reverend France Davis, Dr. France Davis, who once marched alongside Martin Luther King Jr. from Selma to Montgomery as a civil rights advocate. He has since served as a pastor at Calvary Baptist Church in Salt Lake City for more than 45 years, currently functions as the chaplain to the U's football team, and has written 4 books about Utah's Black history, including a memoir titled France Davis, An American Story Told, also published by the U of U Press, and we're going to add a link to that book as well so that you can get more information on how to get access to Dr. Davis's book. Welcome, Dr. Davis. Thank you for doing this with us.
Thank you. It's my privilege to be here, and I look forward to the discussion.
Betsey Welland is Senior Archivist in Special Collections, serving in the Manuscripts Division since 2008. Betsey is a U of U alum with a BA in history and also holds a Master's of Library and Information Science from San Jose State University. Welcome, Betsey. Thank you again also for doing this event.
Thank you very much for including me. I appreciate it.
So I have a list of about 6 questions, and they are pretty robust questions. And we have about an hour. We did talk a little bit, beforehand and prep that depending on how the answers go, maybe we'll go over the 1 hour. We're going to kind of try and stay open and flexible. And like I always say, it's the great thing about doing these Facebook Live events is we can kind of, have that flexibility, which is nice. So we're going to see how far we get through these 6 questions. But given the history of Alberta Henry and who she was and what she did, we might very well go over the 1 hour or maybe not get to all of the questions. I do also want to encourage the audience and participants to ask questions. I mean, that's really what these events are about, an opportunity for the community, those on the web, to really be able to engage with authors and thought leaders and really be able to have conversations. So again, Jordan Hansen, the media specialist, he's going to watch the Facebook page for any questions that are coming from those viewing, and then he relays them to all of us on the panel. So we'll get to those questions as Jordan submits those to us. Okay, so let's start with the first question for Colleen. And I do kind of have them organized for the three panelists, but like I was telling them earlier, I want all the panelists to feel like they can jump in and provide perspective when you feel like it's needed. So, but I'm going to sort of pitch this first question to Colleen. And I just have to say, so I've read the book, of course, and I love the book. And what I really liked about this kind of the opening portion of the book is learning about Alberta's younger years and her upbringing. And I really loved learning that she was named after a peach tree. That just felt so personable to me, and to kind of get to know a person that way through a book was really endearing. So I was definitely struck by that. And I was also struck by how really independent Alberta was as a young person. It seemed like she was always testing limits and the expectations that others had of her. So maybe, Colleen, you could just talk a little bit about her younger years and this aspect of her life, this, testing limits, that portion of her life.
Okay. Alberta was born in Louisiana, which was a segregated Southern, blacks put down in any way possible kind of state. But her family moved to Kansas, and Kansas was schizophrenic. There were some districts, school districts, that were segregated, some districts that were integrated, some that were segregated in elementary schools and integrated in high schools, and some that were vice versa. It was a chance to look around and see there is not just one way to live. And she did a lot of things with that. She had good friends in high school of both races, black and white. When she came to Utah, she had good friends of all races, because Utah is more potpourri than lots of states. It was eye-opening for her to see that Kansas was so different from Louisiana.
Yeah, I mean, it really seemed like that was a major formative in terms of her personality, that really, like seeing her parents and the experience of her parents and that schizophrenia, like you had mentioned, it seemed like that really pushed her to kind of have that, self-protective mode, and then really kind of challenging others in the way that they were thinking about her and about the larger society. And that, I mean, she, from such a young age, she was just like really gung-ho about like expressing her opinion and not being shy and just making her thoughts known.
I think she got a lot of that from her mother, because her mother had been raised in Kansas, and she too would see a number of things. Her father was raised in Louisiana, and she said to the end of his life, if a white man came down the street, he would step off the sidewalk and into the gutter until the white man had passed. And she kept telling him, Daddy, you don't have to do that. But it was so ingrained in him that he kept doing it, and she kept telling him not to.
Yeah. And I think it would be well, I think if we also, for context, remember that the Brown versus Board of Education decision was rooted in Kansas as well. That Linda Brown grew up there in that area. And so she had the same kind of drive and spunk that Alberta had.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, as a student, then as growing up, essentially, she definitely was born with that free spirit. That free spirit got fostered through her family, and then in response to the larger society around her. so she was this free spirit, but she was also a really good student. And I mean, she got straight A's. She was always reading, always exploring. And what I thought was really interesting about her biography is that she wrote a term paper, Colleen, that you had mentioned.
Yes.
And the term paper was about Utah. And she wanted to write about the 1847 crop devastation in
Yes.
Salt Lake City. And before she had any idea that she would live here, and even knowing like the fuller history of Utah, I thought that was so, like, the serendipity of that was really fascinating. So Colleen and France, both of you, how would you say her education shaped her early adult life?
I think it made her want to explore because she was always interested in, I mean, she read a range of books, lots of kinds of things, but she wanted to travel. She wanted to see the world. And I think she was looking for more than just new scenery to look at. She was looking at meeting more people in more areas.
Mm.
And I think she understood that broad education is what makes for good education. And as a result, she wanted to learn about and be grounded, not just in Louisiana and Kansas, but also in other areas. So she studied about and learned about those other areas. Perhaps that's also where the Alberta Henry Education Foundation, part of its start from, is to help students to understand that it's not just about one locale, but it's about a broad education that's important for all of us. And that the better we are educated, the broader we are educated, the better we are educated.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think she saw education as like how it impacts a whole person. That yes, it's about learning and getting good information, but that it seemed for her that it was also about like your personhood, how you think of yourself and your place in the world and how you move throughout the world. I mean, she had a much broader concept of education than maybe just it seemed for her was more than just teaching and learning. It was.
And she wanted it for more people. That's part of the reason she started the foundation. She wanted Black students and all students who were in need to be able to go to college and learn more than they had learned in high school, which is a good thing. I mean, look at the difference between a high school campus and a college campus, and you see a vast difference immediately. And she wanted them to see that broader spectrum.
Right.
Dr. Donald Thomas helped her with this. He was superintendent of the Salt Lake City schools, and he helped her to be able to broaden education within the Salt Lake City School District, as well as the other districts. In fact, Dr. Thomas tells the story about a time when she fired a person from a different district, which she had no power to do in actuality, but she was able to do it because of her notion about education and her interest in ensuring that everybody got as broad an education as possible.
I thought it was interesting looking at her papers was the fact that she really made it a point to take Black students out of the state of Utah and take them to different places. So they would have trips that they would go on. One was to Jamaica, others to California, and just get them out of a situation and say there's more to this world than what you're seeing, and how committed she was and how she made that happen, and what a difference that made in these students' lives, and reading through some of their feedbacks on the trips and how much they appreciated learning about different cultures, different places, and knowing that there's more to this world than where they're from. And I thought that was always really cool to see in her papers.
Right. Yeah, really offering and opening up opportunities. Yes. That seems like, I mean, that's a pretty, taking education a step further. Most certainly. I mean, like, you can learn so much from, books and from reading and from exploring archives, and then, meeting with your fellow students and learning things in class from teachers and professors. But yeah, I think kind of having that guided, like, here's what the world looks like. That's a pretty unique experience for a young person to be able to have.
And one of the things that Colleen has captured, it seems to me, about Alberta is her notion that with books, you can travel places that you may never go physically. And that's part of what Alberta's life was about.
I think that's true.
Mm-hmm. I know, she would have made a great librarian too. Okay, so France, I mean, so we're kind of getting onto this theme of, like younger years and kind of this feistiness and really, a fierce curiosity and, fierce need to know things. Turning now to Salt Lake City. So I have to say, it just totally made me laugh when, in the way that Colleen relayed Alberta's characterization of Salt Lake City, which she said was the dullest place she had ever seen. I mean, I had to, it's based on the rest of her life, I can totally see where she's coming from. So yeah, I loved that. I just thought it was really great and funny. So she thought it was dull, but she loved the mountains. And I wonder, I think people maybe relate to that. And so I would say Salt Lake City maybe suffered a bit from a lack of nightlife. I think maybe that was where she didn't see a lot of opportunities for the Black community, for Black people to come together in Salt Lake City. So maybe that's something you could touch on. But I think she also meant that it was dull in other ways. And I am wanting you to really correct me on this, but I would say maybe she thought that there was lack of visibility of Black people and lack of cultural opportunities for communities of color in general. So, but despite all of this, because of the mountains and her life, she just felt called to be here basically as a mission. I mean, she really saw it as a mission. So I'm just wondering how aware you were of her calling, and then what you can say about first meeting Alberta and then working so closely with her throughout your career in Utah.
Well, Alberta came to Utah with a sense of mission. She was convinced that God wanted her to be here, and that by being here, she could make a positive difference. And I think that's a part of what the book Feed My Sheep captures, is that she could be here and make a difference in the lives of others. At the same time, she could also make a difference in terms of her own life. You do know, for example, that Alberta did not have a lot of formal higher education until later on in life. And it is later on that she's able to go back to college and get trained in terms of college training. But that sense of mission, that sense of a goal, that sense that she could positively make a difference in the lives of others was always what Alberta was about. Now, the dullness issue is an interesting one, because she saw this as a dull place because you mentioned nightlife. There was little of that, but also there were no African Americans that were elected to political office. There was not much social interaction except for the one club or two, and the one day or so at Lagoon that African Americans were allowed. So there also was the dullness of not being able to see many people of African American descent here in the state of Utah. And that continues even to the day. The numbers have grown to about 30,000 or 40,000 or so now, but it's still the same percentage of less than 2% of the state's population. So it makes for a dull place. And when you talk education, you need something to inspire more than the what one reads and what one studies in the classroom, but you also need that interaction with people in a larger sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Alberta said that kind of thing very much. She loved the mountains. She loved a number of the things about it. And she was debating moving to the West Coast, going back to Kansas, a number of things. And so she did what she always did. She prayed about it.
Mm.
And the Lord gave her a clear answer. And her response was, "Oh, Lord, no, not Utah." But she stayed anyway. She and I had some interesting discussions about that because I grew up in Ogden, which was much more integrated, partly because it was one of the first two railroad junctions on the Intercontinental Railroad. It was, my classes in high school were always potpourri. And some of my best friends were, I think particularly of one Japanese girl who was in Seattle when her family was, when Pearl Harbor was bombed. And they were rounded up and put into a camp. And the only place for the kids to play was a mud hole. And she played in the mud hole. And the Seattle newspaper took a picture of her and said, "How much danger does this child represent?" And I really admired the newspaper editors for doing that. That needed to be done in a lot of places, with a lot of races and a lot of groups, to help people understand we may be different colors, we may speak different languages, but we're still human beings. And I think that's one of the things she really worked to tell people about.
Yeah, you really, in the book, you really get a sense of her religious calling and her commitment to her beliefs. And yeah, that, like, she definitely had mixed feelings about being called to Utah, but she really believed in that calling and what the role that her God had for her in this place. That was also very inspiring.
And looking at her life, you have to think the Lord was right.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we can note about Alberta that all of us could learn from is that she was not only engaged in her own community, helping religiously to start churches and all of that sort of thing, and to start the Education Foundation, but also in the larger community. She saw her mission as to affect the lives of African Americans, but also to affect the lives of everybody else in the community.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, so staying kind of on this Salt Lake City theme, and this is a question that I'm hoping all three of you can touch on. Salt Lake City as a municipality and Utah as a state did not have Jim Crow laws, but did have de facto segregation, perhaps a history that Salt Lakers and Utahns might not be aware of. For example, Colleen, you mentioned in the book, the realtor's advertisement that is in Alberta Henry's papers here at Marriott Library, which the advertisement had to say explicitly that the realtor intended to sell to Black people. I think not everybody is aware of this reality. And this was for the home that she purchased in Poplar Grove. So, I mean, this was 40s. I think, did she buy the home in the 40s or the 50s?
I think it was into the 50s or early 50s, late 40s.
Okay. What about this fact of Salt Lake City's history? How do you all want to comment on this as, from your professional perspectives, as her biographer, as, a reverend, as a former pastor, as an archivist? What is your sense of this history of Salt Lake City in Utah?
Well, there may not have been on the books laws, but there were certainly practices that affected the lives of people because of their particular skin color. For example, there were restrictive codes in real estate contracts, as you mentioned about purchasing a house. There were certain areas that you couldn't expect to live on if you were of African American descent. There was also religious restrictions that were held about whether one could be fully accepted within a particular religious group, the dominant religious group of this community. And there also were times when people came to Salt Lake and couldn't get a place to stay. The Green Book is an interesting book to read. There were only 2 places in Salt Lake City that African Americans could expect to readily get a place to stay here during the 1930s. During the 40s and the 50s, the greatest singer in the world came to Salt Lake and had to eat her meals in the room of the Hotel Utah. And although she was singing with the symphony. So it's true that it was a part of the life here in this community. And Alberta saw that in the classrooms and in the schools in a special way. She saw that there were very few teachers who were African descent, role models, very few no principals at all in the early days. And so there was just a lot of work that needed to be done in that area. And Alberta was an impetus for doing a much of that.
I think it's also true that the minority groups were very small,
right,
in most cases, which accounts for a lot of lacks, but some of it really was a matter of, well, we can't promote that one up to there because we'll hear from the parents. And that's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
It's also that it was not, again, it was across the nation. It's why the Brown decision was so important, because most of the people in this country really didn't know there were de facto segregations in their own areas.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't noticed.
One thing I noticed by going through Alberta's papers is with marginalized communities, a lot of resources are shared by flyers placed in churches, word of mouth. I also noticed in, for example, the NAACP Salt Lake branch, they had advertisements that were focused on the needs of the community, hair salons, restaurants, various resources. So it's really kind of sometimes tricky to find great examples of what was available to those communities, what kind of services, because a lot of times you wouldn't find it in standard newspapers because of the issues of segregation and such. So it's kind of eye-opening to see that those resources are there, but it just wasn't advertised in the broad sense because it was just provided in different resources.
And still till this day, that is true, that there are many resources available for people of African American descent, but whether they are publicized or whether they are known, When new people come to town, they start with the churches and the barbershops, try to find out what's available and what's not available within the community.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense about her religious calling then, and why that was so central for her. Because it really is that community building and connection point for so many African Americans.
Well, Alberta was elected as the president of the women's group within the National Baptist Churches. And out of that is where the Education Foundation got its start. It started there, and then when Alberta resigned, then it went with her and became a formal organization with the help of some other people in the community. And so it started within the African American churches.
Well, that's actually a really great segue to maybe talk a little bit more about the foundation. I mean, this on top of what she did to build churches, I mean, together, it's really just amazing. So maybe let's talk about that for a minute. And France and Colleen, this is kind of geared more towards you, but Betsey, again, feel free to chime in. All right, so the Alberta Henry Education Foundation, it supported several Black students at the U of U. But what was news to me from the book, Colleen, is that it also supported students at USU, at Salt Lake Community College, and Westminster College, which is just really fantastic. So Alberta notes that in the book, I think she relayed to you, Colleen, that it was a collaborative effort. And I think what you're touching on, France, a collaborative effort with other community foundations and churches, but that she felt very happy that the people of Utah gave their money to support young people in their pursuit of higher education in Utah. So kind of given this really centralizing factor of the foundation, do you both, Colleen and France, think that Alberta viewed this as a crowning achievement in her life?
Well, perhaps in the early days, African Americans were not readers, not writers, and it was against the law in some places for them to be taught to read and write. But within the National Baptist Churches, the Women's Association of the Utah-Idaho Baptist Association and the New Hope Baptist Church, which was here in downtown Salt Lake City, and Alberta was a part of both, was an instrument that was used to help people not only to be religious, but also to learn how to read and write. And so she saw that as an important part. And then Mr. Wally Sandyke, who was a local attorney, came alongside her as she worked for him. And she came alongside of her and helped her to raise funds. All of this was in the 1960s and early 70s that she was so energetic about ensuring that young people had an opportunity to get higher education.
And I think it's also interesting to note that she met Wally Sandyke because she went to work as a maid, which is what Black women did after all. But he did not just see her as a maid. He recognized what she was doing. He recognized a number of things, put a lot of money and time and energy into it, helped her with the legalities of setting up the foundation, and really became an advocate as well. It's interesting that for so many people in the broader community had no clue what was happening in the Black community. And when they found out, they said, well, wait a minute, that's not right, and went to work to help it out.
And members of the Sandyke family continue today to help the Alberta Henry Education Foundation. Roger, for example, is a local person that's still doing some of the work to help the organization to be on firm legal grounds.
Yeah, I mean, there's an appendix. So Appendix B in the book. I mean, it's even just a sample, but it's like, I mean, a page, it just goes on for like several pages, like the list of names of students and the assistance that they received from the foundation, and then what they were able to go on to achieve. I mean, it's like, it's just really incredible. And I just think, like you were saying, France, like she might not have had her own experience as a young person with a higher education degree. Like I don't think she followed that traditional route, you know, of like entering college as a 18-year-old, 19-year-old, and then graduating at age 24. I mean, she got honorary degrees, and then she also did get a bachelor's degree later in her life. But I just think her perspective on that much larger role of how education builds up a person is really evident in the foundation.
And I think one of the things that the foundation has done under Alberta's guidance was to take on students not just of African American heritage, but of all other heritages as well. White students were some of the students who got the scholarships, Hispanic students, Asian American students, all kinds of students were included. And they went to a variety of colleges here in the local area.
Right. So, okay, let's maybe talk a little bit more just about some of her working life. I mean, Colleen, you mentioned she was a maid, and when she first moved to Salt Lake City, that was employment that was open to her. And then she eventually, I mean, I think she was a maid for a while, but then she stayed in connection with the family as a family friend for the rest of her life. And then her career shifted. She became a minority consultant for the Salt Lake City School District. And that work was pretty amazing. I mean, what she did, and the book goes into it quite in depth. So she was this consultant, and then she established, as France was saying, 2 different Baptist churches. I mean, okay, so the foundation plus being a consultant and organizing 2 churches, that also seems like crowning achievements to me. And Colleen, you've also mentioned that she has a family, she has children, and which she also considered her crowning achievements. So given this range of her work, do you think there's areas of the collection, the Alberta Henry collection, the papers and the photographs, that need more exploring by researchers? So I'm thinking, like, her book, for me as a reader, really brought to light the psychological effects of de facto segregation. It also brought to light, for me, women in education, women in religion, and definitely, this is very much my personal opinion, it offered for me a much more accurate history of Salt Lake City. And this whole idea of, about honoring one's ethnicity and one's heritage. So Betsey, as an archivist, what is your take on these areas of her collection and her papers that maybe need more books and maybe need more writings and more organization around her life and these experiences, and then this larger history that she was very much a part of?
One thing that I have seen actually with the papers is Alberta's papers actually get used quite a bit. Just a couple of weeks ago, somebody came in to look at her collection specifically in terms of her work with education in the Salt Lake School District. I think currently what struck me is living today and thinking about the work that she did in the past is how things, how little kind of things have changed, and how much work still needs to get done. Looking at some of the surveys that she did with parents in the Salt Lake School District in the 60s and 70s, and just knowing that there's so much challenges that the community needs to deal with. And there's a discussion right now about a lot about diversity and multiculturalism and teaching that in schools. I think it would be great to learn more about, well, where at that time, where was she working with the different issues going on, and where are we now, and how are things changed, and how can we also improve things, and how can we communicate better with all the diversity that is in school, but what are the current problems that we're dealing with. I think that's something I'm really curious about, is just the education of our younger students today.
And I would suggest that we ought to look more seriously, I think, at Alberta's civil rights history. She worked with the NAACP, she worked with the legislature, she did a lot in the school district. And just to look at those three areas of her civil rights activity would be worth, I think, a book or two.
I think that's true. To look at her activity and the activity of those around her, and particularly the activities of those people, the students, the other young people that she brought up, and helped them to see broader spectrums.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a really interesting take to look at it from that perspective of civil rights and her leadership within that work, and the conjunction with education and religious life as well within Salt Lake City. I mean, that would be a pretty fascinating, I mean, I'm sure some of your books go at this direction too, France, like that kind of convergence of so many aspects within like this city, and then of course within the state.
The NAACP in Salt Lake was started by the Calvary Baptist Church, but it's Alberta who later on, along with Jim Dooley and Mr. Sargent and others, who became leaders of that organization as members of that particular church, the Calvary Baptist Church. And as such, there is that connection between the civil rights, the oldest civil rights organization in the world, and the oldest National Baptist organization in the world as well.
That would be a really fun book to read. Somebody needs to write it.
I just wanted to say that in terms of archives, our collections dealing with the Black community is very minimal. We do have a couple of oral history collections, Alberta's collections, but in terms of research, I just appreciate Colleen advocating for archives with Alberta. Alberta had her papers and she said, these need to go into an archive. They need to be made available. And one thing I've noticed with marginalized communities is in terms of research records, personal materials, a lot of times it's an issue of trust. Well, how are these papers going to be used? Will something bad happen for having these materials accessed or accessible? And so I just really challenge people to start conversations, advocate for these materials, because right now we're talking about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And if we don't have these materials available, research becomes very difficult. So these stories, it becomes more challenging for these stories to be told. And so I'm just really grateful for the fact that Alberta donated these materials, because they get used and they're so essential. And especially now with the Black Lives Matter movement going on, we need people to share their stories, what's going on So that's one thing I really want to promote right now, is just have those conversations if you're involved with these communities and advocate. It might not be the University of Utah archives, but it might be any archive out there to preserve these voices, because they really matter.
Like Alberta, she set the example for many of us, and there are many people who have papers that Betsey, perhaps you could get. Wilfred Samuels, Ron Coleman, myself, others have papers that they wouldn't mind sharing. And, perhaps if we could reach out to some of them and use Alberta and Colleen's work as an example of what's possible.
Reverend Davis, I really appreciate you saying that, because you might be hearing from me. Actually, it's not a might, it's probably a will. So be aware of what.
Great.
The other thing I think we need are interviews, lots of them from a great span of people. And just, what did you see in your life? Sometimes it will come out that the life was very narrow and they saw very little beyond it. And other cases, it goes to things you never thought about. They go in a dozen different directions.
Right.
Yeah.
The oral history collections we do have, they were done in the 80s. So if you think about where we're at now, I mean, that's a big gap where we don't have stories. And so, yes, we do need them. It's really essential. So that would be a great project, I think, is to start doing some oral histories too.
Absolutely. I mean, those are all wonderful suggestions, like really reaching out to collect those papers from all three individuals that you have mentioned, France. And yes, Colleen, I totally agree. Like, I mean, the stories that really came through in her book were, I mean, they were very eye-opening about like what you just were saying, like the limitations that an individual comes up against. And then I think she took it further because of her, just her personality, she took it further to really be honest about what impact those limitations had on her, how they made her feel, how it kind of led to this diminished state. And that I think if you are not in any kind of minority and you've not experienced that yourself on any kind of day-to-day basis, you just don't know what the feelings are and that psychological effect that can come from it. And to have it really on, in a book, like on paper, and then be able to read, it makes it much more eye-opening and enlightening to know those details. And I think having those oral histories, it would be just, because then it's sheer numbers, because then you see like that perspective across, a community, and then you are then seeing that difference of experiences across different communities. And then you're looking at, okay, well, we're trying to achieve fairness and justice, and here's where we're failing in achieving fairness and justice. And we know because we have evidence through these oral histories and other archival works. So great, wonderful suggestions.
I think maybe what the U of U needs to do is offer a class in interviewing and recording personal histories, and send students out to find people who have been neglected, who are unknown, and then they can donate their interviews to the archives and build things in a good way.
I agree. I think that would be a worthwhile course. And I think that there'd be lots of interest from people to take such a course and learn how to do oral histories and write.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think that would be a really popular course. And I think it's something that we could even do within the library. I mean, just within the profession of librarianship and archivists, it's definitely part of our professional duty. I mean, Absolutely. And so like a combination of both, curriculum based like support and, making it like giving it the structure, and then like in combination with the profession of librarianship. Yeah, I think that there's so much that we could gather and so many stories, important stories to tell.
Yeah. Maybe a starting place would be with Colleen's book, Feed My Sheep. And then perhaps there was a librarian at the university named Curly Jones, who did a book that had lots of bibliographical information in it. And maybe that would be another starting place. Ronald Coleman was a historian at the university for more than 40 years, and he wrote about the history of African Americans in Utah. And Helen Papanicholas was also very instrumental in putting together items about African Americans in Utah. Leslie Kellen, you sound like you're familiar with his book, the 1980s, but that those would all be great resources.
Absolutely. Well, I definitely see some great future projects coming out of this conversation. So like in the very least, I think bringing together, Curly's bibliography and making that maybe more web-based, that could be a great place to start. And then having like those lists like Ron's books and France, your books, and of course, Feed My Sheep and other resources that I think for people to kind of know what's already out there. It's like it all feeds each other, it's like that's the information cycle. So definitely starting there, and then finding good ways of gathering stories. And we know how to do that. So yes, Betsy and I, we can get on it.
Well, great. There also are, by the way, 4 or 5 videos that have been done about African Americans in Utah, and Alberta is included in most of those. And so it would be a great project to take a look at those videos that have been done.
And possibly make them available online.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
One of our collections for oral histories is available online. I believe the other one is not due to oral history releases, but that is available. So I think having these more accessible is definitely a great resource to have for people and the public in general.
One of the limitations we run into is that it can't include living people, because that's revealing information that may be used to steal somebody's bank account or defame them in some way or some other paranoid kind of thing.
Yeah.
But for people who are gone, we can put all kinds of information. And family history and genealogy is now one of the top hobbies in America.
Right.
There's a lot of information out there if you go look for it.
Right.
And there are 30 African-American, predominantly African-American churches in the state of Utah too, that all have historic documents that go back some to the 1800s.
Wow. Yeah, I wonder who's taking up some of Ron's teaching. We should I'll have to look at the history department and their curriculum, and that just seems like a really natural partnership.
Well, he's still around too, by the way, so you could call him directly.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry for my phone there. Well, we don't have any questions yet from the audience. We did have a comment though from Laurie. She says, I am enjoying the discussion. Thanks for making this happen. So any final thoughts before we wrap up here? I definitely want to I hope that people will read this book. I mean, that's the point of today's discussion. So that's my main wrap up is please read the book.
Well, I would suggest that we follow Betsey's suggestion and see if we can start such a course on collecting oral histories. See if maybe there's enough interest either in the ethnic studies area or communications or in language, English departments at the University of Utah, perhaps even at Westminster and other places that there'd be enough interest. There are a couple of authors out at African-American authors out at Salt Lake Community College too, that perhaps we could and find out. Dr. Roderick Land would be a good contact to tell us who those people are.
Also, if possible, feel free to share the contact information for special collections and for myself. If people have resources, if they want to start a conversation about donations, there's no time like the present. It can be really complicated with personal papers and records because it just takes that one person who looks at something and is like, no, we don't need that anymore. And then out it goes. And it could be something as simple as a brochure or a flyer or newsletters that are actually really rich with the type of content that's available and really documents a specific time in history. But all of a sudden it's no longer available. And so if you have those types of resources and if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. And if the university isn't the place, well, you know, there's so many other places, and I'd be so happy to assist people in locating a place where you're comfortable with providing your resources. It's just so important for future generations. It's really crucial.
We just have two other comments. Glenda from the press says the U of U Press is currently working with some of the authors that you mentioned, France, and she would like to broaden publications in this area. So, I mean, natural connection there, obviously, between an archives, a library, and a press. And then Lakeisha says, Alberta Henry was an incredible, inspirational woman. I can't wait to read the book. Yay!
Yeah. By the way, there also is one African-American that's in the state legislature, House of Representatives, Sandra Holland. And that would be a great story for somebody to write, how she was able to, in spite of the fact that there's no majority district for African-Americans, get elected and to get re-elected. Sandra Hollins is her name.
Yeah, love that idea. Well, Colleen, do you want to give us the final word?
I just think Alberta Henry is a splendid example for a lot of us in more than one way. She's positive in her attitudes. She's not afraid to say, that's wrong. She worked with people very well. And if they didn't want to cooperate, she was very persistent. I think she's a good example for a great many kinds of things for a lot of people, whether it's minority groups or not.
Great.
Yes, great last words. Thank you all for doing this event. This was really enjoyable, and I am just have a fire lit under me to continue with this work and this, you know, gathering these really important resources and really highlighting African American community in Salt Lake and in Utah. I just appreciate all the information that you've already provided. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.